Welcome to this Photoshop CS4 tutorial. In this particular section we're going to be looking at resolution and understanding exactly what resolution is and what is the required resolution for your target. On my courses that I do is I regularly talk to people about what their target is. So as an example, if we're talking about commercial printing, maybe a brochure or a magazine, then your target is CMYK commercial printing. Alternatively, your target might be the web, which is going to be a different medium. It's going to be RGB and lower resolution as an example, because it's going to be broadcast on a monitor. If your target is video, then again that's different. You ultimately might come out on a television set. Also, you could have overhead projection as a target, and as well as that, your target might be newsprint, which is a lower quality medium to maybe a brochure or a magazine as an example. I'm going to roughly talk about them in three different categories. So I'm going to call it low res, which is going to be RGB based work for web, where we have a target of 72 dots per inch. And then I'm going to talk about duplication as a target. So a common thing I come across is companies where they create one set of quality originals on a digital color printer and then have them digitally copied on a Xerox type of machine. Resolution for that is probably going to be around about 200, 220, maybe 240 dpi. And then our final target is going to be high quality print, so commercial printing, which has an ultimate target of about 300 dpi. When I start my courses and we talk about the section of resolution is I always open up this photograph. So have a good look at this photograph. You've probably been looking at it for a while. And the first question you have to ask yourself is this a high-res picture or is it a low-res picture? If we just have a quick trip round the picture, you'll see that there's some sort of banding effects and the colour graduations in the background here. And if you look round his shoulders, it's quite grainy around the shoulders. And overall, the whole picture looks fairly grainy and fairly coarse. I'm going to hold down Apple and press the plus key or Control and plus on Windows, and I'm going to zoom in once. Now look at the difference after I've zoomed in. So if I do Apple and minus or Control and minus to zoom out, pretend you're at the opticians, just going to move my mouse out of the way. So better or worse? So there was what the opening state of the image, and there's one zoom on it. It is considerably better, isn't it? Now I'm going to do another zoom in once more. So is it better or worse? It actually looks better at this size. The previous size it looked quite poor, better, slightly poorer again, and if I then zoom in a bit more, better again. I'm holding down the space bar, same on both Mac and Windows, and I can then just zoom around the image, and you can see the image is actually fairly good quality. But which of these zooms do we truly believe? Because of that zoom there, the image you could have easily passed off as being low resolution. The only true way to see the size of an image, first of all, is to view all the pixels in the image. Now, under the View menu is a little feature here called Actual Pixels. And this is usually one of the first things that I do when I open an image, because I like to be able to see all the pixels in an image. This is a 300 dpi high resolution image. It's a high resolution scan of a drawing. And its actual size is really very small. And the only way we can tell that is by going to the Image menu and then going to Image Size. Now, I've set mine to view in millimeters. This now truly shows me the resolution, which is 300 dpi or pixels an inch, the same thing, ppi, dpi, and it's a whopping 70 millimeters by 92 millimeters, so it's really quite tiny. It's a small image, but with a high resolution. Resolution really is the density of dots. At 300 dpi, there's 90,000 pixels per square inch, and at 72 dpi, there's roughly 5,000 pixels per square inch. If I just cancel that, why does it choose to show me in different quality of view in effect? And it's to do with the fact that my monitor has a resolution of only about 5,000 pixels an inch, whereas the image 90,000 pixels. So if I was to zoom out and to view the image roughly at actual size, which is about that, Photoshop can't display all the pixels in the image because there's not enough pixels on my monitor, which is why going for this feature is really one of the best and first things you should do, because this allows you to see every single pixel in the image. So if I go back to image size, I can see here that it's a 300 dpi high resolution image that can really be printed at that size and no greater, maybe a little bit bigger, 5, 10, 15% bigger, before it might start to go grainy in commercial high resolution printing. I'm going to switch to another image. So I'm going to choose image number 4 here to do with resolution, and I'm viewing this in its actual pixels, and I have a picture of a building in America here. So if I just do Apple and minus, or Control and minus, just to zoom out a little bit, it looks fairly good, this image. If we zoom in and out, I usually think the more times you can zoom in and out, the better an image is, the more detail it has. But really, the only way to really truly understand its size and its resolution is to go to the image menu and to go to image size. Now, this image, you could easily believe, is a low resolution image because it says resolution 72, so it's perfectly good for the web or screen resolution. But look at the size of the image in millimeters. It's over a meter by 3/4 of a meter in size. So although the density of the pixels, the resolution is very low, the actual size or the pixel map of the image is actually very large. If I uncheck these 3 little ticks here, then one of the things that Photoshop can do is that you'll notice now that it's chained all 3 of the width, height and resolution together. And this means is that I can then ask Photoshop, or say to Photoshop, this is my target resolution for my output that I'm using, and it can then resample the size of the image and forecast how big it can be used. I don't want to run this image at 72 dpi, I want to run it in commercial print at 300 dpi. And it now shows me that by packing the pixels into a tighter space, but not adding or subtracting any pixels, is that the image can then be run at roughly 173 by 260 millimeters. So it's about 2/3 A4 size in high resolution. And if I click OK, there's no change to the image because all I've done is compacted the pixels into a tighter space. Ultimately, the most important thing is to get the right resolution and the right size. If I was to switch back to the scan of the drawing image here, is that if I went to the image menu now and went to image size, if I was asked to run this at A4 size, is I would have to say, well, I'm sorry, there's just not enough pixels in here. Realistically, we need to rescan the drawing. If you don't have that capability, then what we might have to do is we might have to get Photoshop to artificially add some pixels. So I'm going to put in a target size of 210, maybe slightly bigger because I want it roughly A4 sort of front cover size. So I'm going to make it 220, and notice how it resamples those. But by asking to run it at roughly A4 size, it's now recalculated that I would only have a resolution of about 94 pixels an inch, which would be way too low. Fine for the web at roughly A4 size, but would just look dreadful if you printed it. If I hold down the Alt key, a nice little feature throughout Photoshop is all cancel buttons change to reset. So I'm going to reset that value and recheck these checkboxes. And this time it's only going to keep the width and the height the same. So I want to run this at roughly A4 with a bleed size, so I'm going to go for about 305 millimeters. And you can see that by telling it my target resolution is 300 and at that size, is that my image originally was 2.56 megabytes, but now Photoshop will resample it to nearly 28 megabytes in size. And if I click OK, and I'm just going to zoom out, and I've now resampled this to A4 high resolution size. Still looks pretty good. The only thing about adding pixels that aren't there in the original is images tend to become much more soft focused. So if you do artificially increase the size and the resolution of an image, you will get a degree of soft focus appearing. If you try to use a sharpening filter, probably use unsharpened mask, is that would only accentuate the deficiencies now in the artificially created pixels. Whenever I choose to run an image, if I'm printing, then I know I'm running at 300 dpi, is that the questions I will always ask, and the most important question to me, what is the physical size of the image? The resolution is only one factor, it's the physical size of the image. And even when I get an image that's the right size and the right resolution, is I then do my zoom test. So I will then usually zoom in on the image and see how good the detail is. I could give you an A4 high resolution image that was perfect, it was the right size, the right resolution, but all the pixels could be out of focus. So as an example, if I went to the blur menu and Gaussian blur and then blurred this by 5 pixels, you can see it's now being knocked out of focus. Of course, there's still the same number of pixels in the image and it's still the same A4 size. Technically it is high resolution, but high resolution is no guarantee of the quality of the image. It physically only talks about the number of pixels in the image. You certainly wouldn't want to print that on your front cover. So there we go, understanding resolution. A good quick summary: if you're going to the web, 70-72 dpi. If you're going to newsprint, as an example, you're probably looking at around 180 to 200 dpi. If you're going to high resolution commercial printing, 300 dpi. If there was a lot of fine detail in the picture, maybe even as high as 400 dpi. And if we're duplicating, where we're running off one set of originals and then having them Xeroxed, you might be looking around 230, 240 dpi. But don't forget, always consider the image size.